As part of the Health and Safety Executive, there should be health screening and a PARQ done before each experiment. The PARQ is a series of questions that the participants answer that makes the researcher aware of any injuries or medical conditions they have. Health screening is where the researcher conducts a variety of tests on the participants to check their general health, to make sure that they are fit to do the experiment. These tests include recording heart rate, blood pressure, waist to hip ratio, BMI, and lung function. In this scenario, the researcher did a health screening due to the fact that the exercise was high intensity. They found out that one participant had high blood pressure. These are the health screening results from that one participant that had high blood pressure, and the graphs give an indication of the ideal heart rate, blood pressure, etc. This is good practice from the researcher because they have identified a condition that could have potentially put the participant at risk if they took part in the exercise. This is the PARQ test done on another participant, and this is obviously the questions that the researcher asked. This PARQ clearly shows that they are fit and well to do the experiment. However, if the researcher didn't do any health screening or PARQs on the participants before the experiment, and the researcher knew that it was physically demanding, and then if a participant was to get injured or worsen a condition, then the researcher would be asked to do some health and safety and ethical training in order to refresh their minds about what procedures they should carry out before an experiment is conducted. For the establishment, the participant might demand compensation for their injury or damage to their health as they weren't made aware of the extent of the exercise and didn't have the opportunity to tell them about their health conditions. But in this case, the researcher did everything right and no consequences would come to the participant or establishment because no one can take legal action due to the fact that they made the participants do the health screening and PARQ, so that they were made aware of the conditions they had and when to be cautious. However, in this scenario, the participant with high blood pressure still wanted to take part in the experiment. So this is when the subject disclaimer comes in. So a subject disclaimer is where the researcher makes the participant sign a document agreeing to the fact that they have to take full responsibility for their own health. This may be used in a situation, obviously like this one, like I just said, where the researcher has advised the participant not to take part in the experiment because they would be working at a high intensity and the participant has too high blood pressure and it might put them at risk if they took part. However, in this scenario, obviously the participant wanted to take part, even though they were advised not to. So this document of the subject disclaimer ensures that the establishment and researcher are at no legal risk if something within the experiment causes harm to the participant due to their medical condition. This is because the participant has signed a legal document taking full responsibility for themselves. So if something goes wrong, then they can't blame anyone or take any legal action. If the researcher didn't do this, then this would be bad practice, as then the participant has the right to sue the establishment and researcher as there was no legal document signed. The participant could say the researcher didn't warn them about the consequences if they took part with their medical condition. So if the participant is very ill, then for the researcher it could result in them possibly having a suspension from work for a period of time due to the fact that they were responsible for the participant's health and well-being. For the establishment, the participant might want compensation due to their injuries or illness, and for the establishment, this is then bad publicity as one of their employees has put a participant's health at risk. This could result in nobody wanting to take part in future studies, and obviously for the participant, they could come to physical or psychological harm that could affect their everyday life and their working life, causing them not to be able to make money and supply for their family. The test sequence is the order the tests are done in. The researcher might want to adapt the test sequence so that they don't cause exhaustion to the participants, so the participants stay relaxed and well during the experiment. In this scenario, the participants were only doing 2 exercises, and the point of the test was to test their muscular endurance. Therefore, the intensity of the exercise would be high, which the participants understood. However, by having a good test sequence, it eliminates any psychological and physical exhaustion coming to the participants. If the test sequence isn't correct and the participants do get too tired, but not dangerously tired, the researcher might get a talking to, so like advising them to change it so that no further harm comes to the participant. For the establishment, no legal action would take place. They just have to be aware to advise their employees to think of the participants' well-being. But in this case, no one was physically exhausted, so this was good practice as the test didn't push them too far but gave them an accurate reading of the participants' muscular endurance. It would be bad practice though if the test sequence was very, very demanding and the participants became ill because of this. Then the researcher might get more than just a talking to. They might be advised to do some ethical training so that they are made aware of not to push the participants too much, as it is just a test for research and they are volunteers, they're not elite athletes. Once again, for the establishment, no legal action would take place, but they would just have to talk to their employees about changing the test sequence in order to make the participants comfortable. Scientific misconduct is where a researcher fails to acknowledge somebody else's work that they might have used in their report. This is known as plagiarizing, and there can be legal consequences for this. In this scenario, the researcher in their report didn't cite someone else's work that they were using. So they used somebody else's work that did the same test as them to compare results, but they didn't cite whose work they copied. The consequence for this, if the establishment found out, would be that the researcher's document, so report, would be destroyed and they would probably be deemed untrustworthy. Also, legal action can take place and the researcher could be fined. This is because they have basically stolen someone's idea and work. For the establishment, people might not trust the studies that researchers do in the future due to the fact that one person has plagiarized someone else's work. Linking to this, the establishment's work might be deemed untrustworthy, causing loss of business for the establishment. However, good practice in this situation would be acknowledging the other person's work in their report. Therefore, it protects you as the researcher from any legal action, and it protects the establishment from any bad reputation and legal action too. So, reasons for terminating a test. This is where the researcher must be prepared in any circumstance to stop the test, no matter how many results have been collected, how far along they are in the test. This is to ensure that no harm comes to the participant, researcher, or establishment. There are certain reasons for terminating a test. This can be illness of a participant, broken equipment or unsafe equipment, contamination of liquids and substances in a lab, etc. During this scenario, a participant collapsed. The researcher made sure that the participant got medical attention and then told the participant to go home. so they terminated the test for this participant, which is good in this scenario. But on the other hand, if the researcher didn't terminate the test and told the participant to carry on, and there were further complications to the participant's health, causing physical or psychological harm to them because of this, then the researcher could potentially lose their job due to unethical behaviour and putting the participant's health at risk. For the establishment, this would be bad publicity due to the fact that one of their researchers didn't protect and help a participant when it was their responsibility to. But in this scenario, obviously, it was good practice that they made the participant go home and terminated the test, because then they protected themselves, the participant, and the establishment.